Cool Hand Podcast, something you got to deal with. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host. My name is Q. We have a returning guest back on the show, which I'm excited and very happy to have you back. So, guest, can you please introduce yourself? Remind the people who you are.
Remind the people, if you even listened to who I was before, I'm Yumi. I'm just a creative out here, just, trying to show the world what I can do and just be happy with it. And yeah, there's not much to it.
You're back. Thank you for being back. You know what? So, just to let you guys know, whoever's watching this, so I always end up getting people, or maybe like one or two followers from the people that I interview and blah blah blah. So after I put out the Yumi interview, I ended up getting the Pizzo follow, and then I connected with that was from you.
Dope.
So all leading up to like this. So so I connected with Pizzo, connected with Lance through Pizzo. I used to live down south, so I went to the little pop-up. So the podcast really, through the people that I've talked to, took me places, had me meet people, so all of that. So thank you.
Yeah, and shout out to Pizzo because the brother is cold with it.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to that man. He got real mugs. Like, shout out to the Castier mug.
Real mugs.
So, Yumi, I had this episode that I wanted to do, and I recorded it 3 times. Started working on it last year, and it was not coming out right at all. And it was a real waste. It wasn't a waste of time, but it made me realize that I needed somebody else, not just so I can talk about myself, but to hear somebody else's unique perspective. And I thought you were someone who has a unique perspective as well. So what I was failing at, that I deleted 3 times, wasted all my time, was talking about my experience growing up being black, but more so how I fit into what people think black is. And so I'm thinking, who can I talk to who can possibly relate? I'm not saying you're like me or whatever, but somebody who might have faced some challenges due to their background.
Yeah, I get that.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I talked for a long time, going back to our last interview. I have this written down, that you have an Ethiopian and Japanese, Ethiopian and Japanese background, and you grew up in a Mexican and Chinese neighborhood.
Yep.
And people thought you were Afro-Latina. Mm-hmm. Can you give an overview in terms of how you might have been perceived growing up with such a diverse background?
Okay. Well, for one, I did not, which is like, it's going to sound, I guess, I don't know, ignorant. I didn't see color. Like, my entire family are different complexions, different facial features because of our backgrounds. Some of my other cousins and stuff like that, they're all mixed. Everyone's got something in them. And so for me, everyone's just an individual. I didn't really see, the difference between us. And being in a Mexican neighborhood that was predominantly first generation immigrants, it wasn't like America the way I see it now. The Mexicans that were coming from Mexico were darker than me. Some of them had Asian features. Some of them just had very black features. So it was like, I didn't feel out of place. Everyone mistook my mother for a Latina as well. She's very fair complected. And so I didn't have this like issue being amongst Mexicans at all. The crazy part is that I don't know what it's like in Pittsburgh, but in Chicago, it's very segregated. Even though it's a very diverse city itself, it's not mixed up. There's always these separate neighborhoods. And so growing up, we had a park that separated my neighborhood from the black neighborhood. And I didn't often cross that area, but neither one of either black or Latino was allowed to cross the parkway. Otherwise, it would be some type of gang fight. And we didn't typically see gang stuff on a regular basis because it was, it's the 90s and they really weren't heavy with like shooting up people and stuff, but there was just like, don't cross the line. And so me and my family were accepted as Latino. So we didn't have to cross the park or anything like that. I didn't have much experience with black kids. And so it wasn't until high school where that kind of just all came out. Even though my family is black as well, it's a different experience when it's your family and you're experiencing the culture. And so I didn't experience the culture until I got to high school. And it was eye-opening.
How eye-opening? Because you were into rock. You were into emo, if I remember correctly. So
punk
even
rock.
The music,
Too old
punk
for
rock,
emo.
punk rock. Okay. Yeah. Excuse me, all my punk rockers. No disrespect. So punk rock. So even that, growing up, 90s, early 2000s, right. What was that like when you got to experience the quote unquote culture?
Man, everyone was confused to like why I was dressed the way I was dressed. Punk rockers, we had the baggy clothes, hanging chains, wearing black nail polish and gloves and stuff like that. And all the girls in high school were wearing baby fat jackets, big gold, bamboo gold earrings and stuff like that. All the guys in their Jabot jeans and stuff like that and big tees. I just was not used to this. I was just like, where is this fashion coming from? I'm not familiar. And for me, I only knew old school hip hop. I wasn't familiar with the stuff that was on the radio because I wasn't listening to it. Unless it's just like it somehow got its way over to like the Kiss FM station and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I wasn't listening to it that often. I think the first thing I heard was Laffy Taffy and like like there was just certain songs of course that I heard and like us punk rock kids were like, okay, I can rock with this, but I wasn't, if it wasn't Mos Def, Talib or Q-Tip or Ghostface, like I really wasn't listening to what our era at the time was making. And then when I got to high school, I was like, this is how black people really are. This is cool, and I think I like it. But they definitely thought I was white.
So did they think you were white, or did they think you were? This girl acts like a little white girl.
Right. They thought I was like acting like a little white girl.
Okay.
And if we all know, like, I don't know if your experience was the same, but well, for me, because of having a certain texture of hair, having certain facial features, and I wouldn't say it was their fault of the way they were treating me, but sometimes the girls would be like, oh, she thinks she's better than us because she mixed or something like that. And I didn't feel that way about myself because I just saw myself as a black girl, even though I do have other backgrounds. But I definitely got treated a certain type of way, and girls was always trying to fight me. So that was a new experience as well, as having other girls that you think to yourself look like you, and they don't perceive you to be the same, and want to attack.
hating girls. I could use a lot of different terminology, um, but yeah, that nasty jealousy. Okay, so I want to ask you. I want to ask you another question. I don't want to get into myself too much or yet, but
I mean, get into yourself.
how?
Get into yourself.
Uh, we'll worry about me later. What was so? How was the adjustment from the big chains, baggy jean or baggy pants? You know, if you know this era, you know this era.
Right.
So that punk rock attire and transitioning, not like transitioning, but getting adjusted to what's called the culture. Like, how did you make that transition? How did you figure out what you liked? So on and so forth.
It was not easy. One, I have like a semi-strict parent. So the punk rock stuff was already super confusing for her. Like, my mother is born in 1970. She's not old at all, but she grew up in a different time. And so seeing punk rock stuff, and she's like, okay, are you serving the devil? And once she figured out, okay, my child's just a little touched, that's what she thought. Like, oh, she's just a little touched. I'm going to let her be because it doesn't look like it's causing any harm. And then once I got to high school and I saw this, there was a bit of peer pressure because I'm like, okay, I want to fit in a bit. Like, I don't want to change who I am, but I do want to fit in a bit and see what it's about. So my stepmother actually would buy like baby fat and stuff like that, and that's how I got my hands on it. Because my mother would not purchase that kind of stuff. She was just like, it's ghetto. It's like, I'm not buying stuff like that so you can look like the little hood chicks. And so, but I'm like, but Mom, it's cute. I just wanna look like, and she's just like, no, I'm not buying it. But my stepmother came in clutch for me. I got my
shout out to
first
stepmoms.
Pieces of baby fat, and I was feeling a part of something finally. I started to pick up the slang, the lingo at the time. I got all of the music. Literally, I got for my graduation, my 8th grade graduation. My aunt bought me the first generation iPod with the video. And one of my friends in high school downloaded everything that was like current. That was like from our freshman year, and she continued to like update it all the time for me. And that's how I kind of like got exposed to stuff. One, I wouldn't encourage it, but like I got into Pretty Ricky and Nicki Minaj, and I had already known Drake from like some other past stuff that I worked on. So she just had uploaded some more of his stuff that was current, and so it was just like I was getting into knowing like what our culture was doing at the time. ATL was heavy in the whole 06 to 07 time frame. So it was fire. I was like, okay, I kind of like us. I like us.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting coming from specifically your background, and I think personally you grew up very diverse just with the Ethiopian and Japanese what's the I'm not the smartest person, lineage. The Ethiopian and Japanese lineage alone itself is interesting.
Yeah.
But I could definitely see it as a challenge. I'll say for myself, I'm just black. I'm just no special parents. They say my last name is supposedly French, but
it is. I've heard that name before.
Now, and I'm not trying to be on no woke stuff, But when I was a baby, when I was a child, I'm like, okay, and we learned about slavery in school. I'm like, okay, so this was my slave master's last name, because I don't see no French here. But so, and I'm saying that because people, like, it's a trend to say, oh, that's your slave name. Man, forget that. I was saying that when I was in second grade. But anyway, like, you know, culture wise, like, I was always, it's interesting because I was always me. Like, growing up, I was always me and was never ashamed of it. I liked what I liked. I've been listening to 50 Cent since I was 8 or 9. So it was like that's what I was, like, I was a part of it, but I wasn't, because, you know, just sticking out, because at being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, we're not like I wasn't in the streets. I was outside playing, but I wasn't in the streets. So just progressively as school goes on and stuff like that, it's like you talk white. Like I would get that. And I ended up going to a predominantly white school in 10th grade. A lot of things I could say about that, but I would get it from the white people. No disrespect. When we say white people, just this is no literally white people.
I mean, they were.
Yeah. So, but it's like I would get it from the white people, not in like a derogatory way. I think their intentions were not to be outwardly racist, but there's a certain expectation of what a black person is and how they should act, how they should dress.
No, for sure.
So I'm gonna chalk it up to ignorance. So I was on like my real Carlton Banks swag, and I had like cardigans, polo, and they were wearing this stuff anyway. They were wearing polo and the Sperry boat shoes and the little high shorts.
Yeah.
So I had one dude, his name was Will. He ain't never did nothing bad to me. I'm gonna say his name, and I'm sure he doesn't know who I am or watches this podcast. His name was Will. And he was like, Quentin, what are you doing? Like, what are you wearing? And he was being sarcastic with it. He's like, what is this? Like, stop dressing like such a white boy. But, but it's like one of my things is like, you get it from both sides. You'll get it from black people, like, what you got on? That's whack. And you'll get it from white people. You'll get like, what are you wearing? So you get like two different things of racism. Yeah, I guess it's racism.
It's prejudice. It's definitely prejudice.
And your circumstances or your experiences a little different, but at the same time, I want to know about some more of the struggles, if there's any more. You had the people who was hating on you, trying to
that didn't
the hair
stop.
and appearance.
That didn't stop whatsoever. I ended up getting my own little, I guess, clique of friends that were very similar to like personality as me. So funny thing about my school, I didn't go to like some ghetto school in the hood. Anybody that's from Chicago knows Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences. Hearing that name should already tell
sounds
you
fancy.
This school was a fancy school. It had money. It was in a predominantly white neighborhood. And the students who were there, it was very few of us. There was only 100 selected out of the entire city to be accepted each year into the school. And by the time you end freshman year, there's only like, I don't know, 75 to 80% of that class still in the school. So in the entire school, we would have like 350 to 380 students in the entire school. That's all classes. And so our school looked like a mall, the way it was built. We had like different outside areas where you can have, there was ponds, like koi ponds, and We had beehives because we had different, we had a farm. I was in animal science. So we had a nice school. But we had kids that were coming from this area, which is called the Wild Hunnets in Chicago. I'm not from that area. Like I said, I'm from, a more predominantly Mexican and Chinese area that is closer to the inner city than they are. And there's two parts to that area. That's the Wild Hunnets, and it's another side called Beverly. Most of the kids who were in my school were either on the outskirts of the hundreds or they were directly from Beverly. And if you're from there, most of the time your parents are doctors, lawyers, police officers. Like, you have parents with good jobs, and their kids don't have to be in the streets. So I was unfamiliar with these areas when I got to high school. So I would see these kids coming in looking like they from the streets. And even though I'm not from the streets either, I have parents who are very streetwise. And I was trained to be very, streetwise and to protect myself. So any threats, I would protect myself. So the kids, I'm thinking, like, these girls who want to fight me and stuff, like, okay, like, you gotta be ready. You gotta be real, like, keep your focus, girl. Keep your focus. And anytime they wanted to fight me, they thought I was going to back down because they thought, like, oh, this little sedity little mixed girl or whatever, she's not going to do anything. And we just going to scare her. There was no scaring me. I was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this.
Understood.
But I'm going to protect myself. And so it just, after a certain time, like, the girls trying to bully me and stuff like that, it just kind of stopped. And like I said, I ended up with my own little clique. And it ended up being one of my homies, Sierra. Me and her we had, like, I don't know if you had the same experience in high school, but, we had our own MySpace. And, MySpace, you had to, do coding and stuff like that. So we learned how to build a website. So kids in my school would have their own websites for their cliques. And then people would go on your website, make comments and stuff like that. I don't know. We could have used Facebook, but we made our own websites. We were nerds. And it would just start beef all the time. Like,
wow.
So we would have clique beefs for no reason. And that was just kind of like the culture in my school. But I'm going to, like, basically say it was very short-lived because I got sick of high school. I got sick of the high school experience. And before the beginning of my junior year, I decided to do homeschooling and graduated in that same year so that I could just be done with high school. So I was only in high school for about 2 years. I had enough of that experience.
High school could be rough. High school could for sure be rough. Just in general, forget the race stuff. Like, high school could be rough if, yeah, it could be rough. I bounced around, but I got in like some big trouble.
Snap.
And this predominantly, I got in a scandal. This has nothing to do with this. No, not like legal scandal, but
okay.
I had nothing. When you think scandal in high school, like, you may think of something else, but no, like, oh gosh, talk about living up to stereotypes. I did something stupid.
Oh man.
And I had a lot of people on my head. Oh my gosh. I never had so many people on my bumper in my life who wanted. Thankfully, I ain't never get jumped. I left that school unscathed. I'm not going to act like.
You didn't get jumped. You would have been traumatized.
Oh my goodness. Oh gosh. But forget that. Good times. But high school could be. Yeah. I've done some stupid things, people.
We all been
so
there,
anyway.
done that, what happens when you're a teenager.
Oh yeah, I was scary too. I had big dudes on my head. But anyway, so high school could be difficult.
Right.
But yeah, so especially when I'm not gonna say when you don't have a full identity. Like you come in, there's people who play sports and
Right.
the pretty girls who are sticking together. There's always like the popular people.
Right.
Now, when it comes to your hobbies and stuff, because now I done seen you, I done follow you on Instagram for about maybe 2-3 years now.
Yeah.
Maybe before the pandemic, I don't know. So you're into some stuff, man. I've seen you as an avatar. I've seen you as a fairy, or I think a fairy. I've seen the botanist in you. Yeah. So there you go. Self-proclaimed average nerd. Shout out to Avatar. I'm not sitting 3 hours. I don't even remember what happened in the first one. Just a side note. I've had an argument about Avatar.
I really wasn't feeling it.
Thank you. So now I'm definitely not seeing it. That's all I needed was. All I needed was a little negative push.
I was really disappointed. I was like, we waited this long, and this is what you gave us.
Yeah, I was in high school when the first one came out. It's been a very long time.
What year was that?
This had 2009, maybe 2008, something like that.
It was. If it was 2009, I already graduated. I was done.
It might have been before that because we were watching it in school while I was in high school.
Wild.
So yeah.
Yes. It's been that long.
Yeah, it's been a while. All right, so dog, I'm about to be 30, man. I'm 30 this year. I can't believe it. But
Look at that.
feeling old.
You coming on over.
Yeah. It's kind of surreal thinking about it. Like, anyway, forget that too. So the things that you're into, like we talk about this culture thing, the black culture, hip hop, R&B, blues, jazz, woo woo, all this other stuff. And there's kind of like a box that we can be put in as black people as to what we like, what we should like, so on and so forth. And of course, not everybody assumes that. And it's 2023, so this is like the most, I would say, progressive people, young people of different races have ever been. Because back in the day, you couldn't like, if it wasn't Dragon Ball Z, you couldn't really like an anime or something like that,
Right.
or however it's classified.
Right.
So how did you navigate, and how do you navigate even now with some of the things that you rock with? You call yourself a, did you say typical nerd or average nerd?
I'm a typical nerd.
Being a typical nerd,
I'm over here with my
how do you
candle. Feel me?
Oh,
It looks scary now because I don't know, the paint faded. The dude who made it, I don't know what
I was
paint
about
he
to
used.
say.
It looks scary, but you know, I'm a Star Wars fan, Avatar fan, all that kind of stuff, anime fan. I nerd out about a lot of stuff, and I'm proud of it. But I would say everywhere I've been, no matter what age I've been, I've always found my people. People who also, even if it's not exactly what I'm into, they're always passionate, and I love to find passionate people that just thrive off of creating. And I've always found that space. Thankfully, that's not always everyone's situation where they can find other people. And like I'll say, I'm like hugely blessed to have met so many people like yourself and other, people that I got to collaborate with during the pandemic. That helped my sanity and being able to still, use my creativity. But yeah, I'm always able to find my circle where I'm able to thrive with myself, and not feel like I have to suppress who I am in order to fit into the group. Like, I never have to fit into the group because the group is always just accepting and, pushing each other to do better and to perfect their crafts. So I'm always happy with what I got.
That's a real rap. Have you ever felt, and it sounds like I'm like just drilling these questions, but this is stuff that I've gotten to think about for a long time. Like I said, I recorded this episode 3 times and deleted it. So have you ever felt, because I know, I'll speak for myself here. Let's just say school or a workmate or just somebody who has that, I call it like the old school, just the black upbringing. Like not the stereotypical, but the stereotypical black upbringing in a hood or a project building, woo-woo, something like that. Just, soul food all the time. Just, outside, like kids were outside, our era of children.
Right.
We were outside anyway, but outside just like doing some hood rat stuff and all this other stuff. But have you ever felt like you weren't, quote unquote, black enough? Because there's been times where I'm am I just not, you know what I mean?
I think I didn't start to feel black until recent years, to be honest. Like, all of my 20s, even in my 20s, I ended up spending just with Korean people. And so that was also a challenge because it's like I'm trying to, having to prove that I am black, but at the same time prove that I'm also Asian. Like, there was a whole lot of, I understand the culture, but I'm also still different from you. So I've spent quite a bit of time always kind of trying to prove that I'm about it. So it's just as a kid, like I said, I didn't really notice it until I got into high school. When I got into high school, the girls, were different because of the way they spoke and stuff like that, and I didn't speak that way. As Southside Chicagoans, we do have a specific dialect that we do have. That is, I've learned that many people can't comprehend when I'm talking in my natural dialect. But even that dialect was way different when I got to high school. The girls were, saying a lot of different stuff that I was like, I don't know what that word is. And that made me stick out heavily because they're just looking at me like, oh, you're too, they just treated me like I was too bougie. And I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. We had white kids there and they were looking at me like, you're worse than the white kids because at least the white kids know what's going on here. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. I was still clicking with the Mexican kids in my school. Because it just took a minute for me to understand what it was. I just had started watching 106 in Park, and BET was not heavily on my TV before I got into high school. So definitely I wasn't called white, talking white, but definitely I was treated like I was trying to be too much. They thought I was acting like I was better than everybody else because of the way that I carried myself. And I'm like, this is just how I was raised to talk and to carry myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like you can't help your surroundings.
Right.
Your surroundings, the way that you're raised obviously affects you.
Right.
If your parents speak a certain way, if you excel in school, I don't know how I became the idiot that I am today, but I was a good student before my brain cells just started dropping at a rapid pace. But when I was younger, I was in the gifted program. I liked to read. Like, I actually liked to read. I was reading books as a child. I don't want to come. You have to force me to read a book.
Get back to reading.
Yeah, I try to read for educational purposes now, like to just so I'm not how I perceive to be stupid. So I'll read here and there for educational purposes, not for entertainment. But all that to say, I even now I have okay pronunciation. Like I think I speak clearly.
Yeah,
blah
you're
blah
awesome
blah blah
host.
blah.
You got that voice.
Well, thank you.
You got that voice.
But sometimes, now we could take this to school, or if I encounter with somebody from the streets or somebody who's so on and so forth.
Code switching.
I'm like, yeah, it's like, do I look like Bryant Gumbel to this person? Like, seriously? Because you can tell when somebody's kind of switching up.
Yeah.
Or somebody's acting like, I'm like, okay, he's not supernatural with me. Or I can see somebody else kind of adjust how they speak based off how I'm speaking to them. So I sometimes, and even somebody that I dealt with in the past on the romantic level, before I was married, I felt like I wasn't quote unquote black enough for them. You know what I'm talking like? And it was like different backgrounds and everything. There's a lot of things that contribute toward it,
Right.
but it's like, I would call it an insecurity sometimes, because it's like, what do I have to do? Like at the end of the day, and the point of this like episode isn't to like harp on and air our grievances. It's about being yourself and
Right.
accepting who you are and all that stuff. And it's kind of sad. It's messed up today because you and I aren't the only people who may have dealt with some of these things. But it's like, okay, this is who I am. This is the color of my skin.
Right.
Like, I'm black. You can't call me white. I can't clean this off. I don't want to clean it off. I think I look good black. I don't think I could be this complexion.
You better love yourself.
So,
you better love yourself.
right. So it's messed up that society, this world, kind of makes us believe that people should act
Right.
this way or that way. And or the expectation. And I talk about like encountering somebody from the streets or something like that. But even with someone who's of another race or ethnicity, namely, like I've worked with like white people and things like that. And it's like, in my head, it's like, I hope they don't think I'm like this super square, like, because I'm at work too. I'm conducting myself professionally.
Right.
I'm like, that's not me. Like, I remember saying something slang because I got comfortable with my coworkers, and like, you know, they were kind of like taken back by. I'm like, this. Yeah, I'm like, this is actually how I speak.
Right.
Like, this is when you know me,
Right.
I speak this way. But it's I don't know. The whole thing is like
It's like when you've been, honestly, being an American black person, I feel like come out of the womb just having to learn how to not be too black in order to make others feel comfortable. And even though like nowadays it's becoming more and more prevalent for people to just be who they are, but unfortunately growing up that wasn't the case. There was, you know, a certain way we had to carry ourselves. Me being in Chicago, you know, with dealing with police officers, dealing with, you know, me, I used to work in downtown Chicago. I was in the fashion industry since I was 15. until I was 22. And so there was ways that I had to carry myself in order to make sure that people respected me, that they were going to listen to me. On top of that, you know, of being a black woman with darker skin, we tend to be looked at as aggressive and stuff like that. And I'm a taller woman. I'm not short and petite. So on top of being darker, being a black woman, I had to carry myself. So the way I talk, usually by default, starts off at how I'm talking now, just so that other people can understand what I'm saying, so that they don't perceive me a certain way. And I didn't realize that was the case, but, you know, having a black mother always ingraining in me to make sure that that I was safe. Like, the way that we are and the way that we speak that's a way of protection. That's how I perceive it. It's a way of protection, so that when you go out into the world, no one poses or sees you posing a threat because of the way you're carrying yourself. You don't look like, or you don't sound like someone in their minds. Not even that that's the true case, but in the outlookers' minds, that you would be carrying a weapon or that you would be harmful to them. So we had to, you know, fit into this world in order to not make other people think we're a threat. So now when you do go into these spaces and you get comfortable for the first time, it shakes people up. I still have friends who haven't heard my natural way of speaking, and when they do, they're all shook. It's always like, wait a minute, where did this come from? And why do you talk like this all of a sudden? And I'm not used to this. And it's like, well, now I finally feel like I'm in a safe space. Obviously, I didn't, you know, it's not like a manual on and off. It's like an automatic. Once I feel like I'm in a safe space, then it just comes out. But, you know, like you said, in your situation at work, it just kind of naturally just switched off. And they were just like, oh my God, is this a Negro?
Seriously. It's like, oh, he knows a little bit more than we think, or yeah. It's something. There's another thing that I want to, if you want to chime in about, because of, you talk about, it's like a protection, how you carry yourself, and then you get comfortable and you kind of loosen up in that, you know, maybe the slangs, maybe the stuff that you say, woo, 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 all this other stuff. Now, the perception that people have of, and this is inclusive of all races, but I'll say it's inclusive of all races, but I'm gonna, you know, hone in on black people and white people for that matter. So why is there a standard for, or a stereotype as to how black people act or should act or wear, don't wear, all this other stuff? In my research looking this up, my original theory was entertainment, media. What's put out there in front of people is how they perceive other people to act. So when I looked it up, it was like a history of like racism and TV and stuff like that. And there's, you know, certain characters who would act this way or that way.
Got a lot of them.
And and it would be traced back to like the minstrel shows. I did some research with this. This isn't all like personal experience. So it would be traced back to these minstrel shows of, you know, kind of like black caricatures, whether it's a white person in blackface or a black person being super exaggerated and or acting stupid, lazy, so on and so forth. So other people from other cultures and things would come and look at these minstrel shows, and it would give them an idea of, if you had no idea of how a certain demographic of people acted, this comedy show might give you a glimpse of who they were and how they acted.
Right.
In comparison to today, now I love hip hop and I love me some rap. What's being shown, what's a politically, is a whole bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
And even when I was a youngin', like I say this on the podcast, 50 Cent was my hero when I was a child. Getting shot 9 times, I didn't think it was the coolest thing, but I'm like, this is 50 Cent, man. This is 50, man. He's like, all this other stuff.
Right.
But even today, the things that you got worldwide, you got somebody from Switzerland smoking on a pack. That's Chicago stuff. That's their stuff.
Yeah.
But like, this is what is going on. This is what's being put on Twitter,
right,
Instagram. I don't use Facebook, but I'm sure it's on Facebook too. And even for ourselves, now I'm talking some 2023 stuff, but even back then when we were in school, we had the 106 and Park BETs, you had Nelly, Tip Drill, and all this other stuff.
Right.
If you didn't encounter black people and you're watching, whether it's a show on TV or music, this is what you might be expecting from somebody who's black.
Yeah. 1,000%.
And because of that, you said 1,000%. Okay, I'm not crazy. So I think inadvertently, through what people read, see, watch, and even observe, because there are people who perpetuate the stereotypes, unfortunately, because it is a real thing. It's not like, some of these stereotypes are made up. But that's when there's an invisible circle that you're put into, that you're supposed to act, dress, dance. I can't dance. I don't.
Oh.
Like, real talk. I can't dance. So don't expect me to dance. Like, oh, Quentin, you can't dance? I thought, no, I cannot. So did you expect me to? But seriously, there's there's bounds which you cannot cross.
Right.
And I don't think it's somebody's fault, because it might be out of ignorance. If this is all you're being shown, that might be your source of education on something. Go ahead, let me know.
See, that right there is where I get annoyed, because entertainment is what it is. It's entertainment. It's a world that was it's a world created. Whether it's a documentary of something, whether you're watching a TV show that's, based off of something, it's entertainment. It's so the public would like it. And so, yes, media has streamed many different things about black people, but there is history. There's ways of educating. There's ways to communicate directly to the source. And so, even just for anyone, not even just for black people, to know what black people are like, to know what a Chinese person is like, to know what, a Mexican person is like. There's information to educate yourself. You can even put yourself in those spaces most of the time if you want to know. But what I feel like is because of, especially we're in this social media era, people are just lazy, and they're just going to receive whatever is fed to them the fastest. And they also don't want to listen entirely too long to hear the truth of something. So if it's 5 seconds of a lie, they'll believe that before they actually listen to a full dissertation of, why black men are constantly being killed by police. Instead they'll say, oh, I saw on the news that, they look like thugs, and that's why they get attacked or something like that. And you'd be like, what? It's just, people just choose not to educate themselves. And I'll give it a very interesting, a prime example. When I was living in Korea, I was speaking to this older woman, and she didn't like jazz music, but she liked country music. And I was very confused. I was like, jazz is classy. What do you have an issue with jazz music? Because she's a very, like, affluent Korean woman. She comes from a family of money. And so I was like, you choose country over, I'm like, you choose hillbilly country music. If you listen to, like, deep South country music, everybody's talking about sleeping with their sister, somebody jumping out of a window from cheating on somebody, or somebody getting shot, or somebody only got one boot and a gun. Like, that's like, that's all you really hear. Not saying all country music is that way, but it sounds a lot like, to me, like what we hear in trap music. It's just your white man's trap music, in my opinion. So, when she said she didn't like jazz, I had to ask her, like, what was the reason? And she was just like, it's vulgar. And I said, what? She had never actually listened to jazz music. She just heard that jazz music was made by these overly sexual black people. And she also had a bias with black people because she is an older Korean person. She's like in her late 70s. And during the war in Korea, a lot of Korean women were choosing black men to fall in love with. But the government publicized that the black soldiers were raping the women. And so this was a way for them to be able to legally kick all of the mixed black Korean babies out of Korea and send them off to the U.S. because they were claimed as rape cases because they didn't want mixed people in Korea until after the 90s. It was illegal, basically, to be mixed in Korea before the 90s. And so I asked her a question. I said, when you see a white man and you see a black man, who are you more afraid of? And she said, a black man. And I said, why? And I'm sorry, this is just from historical. I don't have any problems with white people. I love white people. But historically, they're the only ones conquering lands. So I'm like, white people came to your land. Black people were just here to serve because of the white people who came to your land. Why are you threatened? If anything, you should be equally threatened if you're just like, if you just feel scared out of not knowing who these people are. But to just choose one without any actual facts is wild. And it's just because people like to get fed information without actually looking up the information. And it's just very interesting. It's just a lot of false stuff, and people just eat it up without even trying to challenge whatever they hear.
Yeah, it's now this doesn't apply for your experience with the older woman because she wasn't using Twitter. She didn't hear that from Twitter.
But she got it from
but
the
it's
news.
Similar.
She got it from a news, so
boom,
news,
even better.
They worse.
So pretty much propaganda,
right?
Pretty much, and similar today, it's like a headline culture. Mm-hmm. It's a headline culture. This is the headline, and now I'm back on Twitter. I got on Twitter. I'm like, okay, let me try to use other social media platforms for the podcast. It's doing absolutely nothing for the podcast. Just it's doing nothing but wasting my time, honestly.
It's not what it was before.
Yeah, so I'm on there anyway, and I see the headlines, and then like it'll be like Say Cheese or not to name, a popular blog or whatever,
right.
And it just might be the headline, and there's no like supporting information underneath. So, and it's a whole thread of people in their opinion, but the opinion is based off of just the headline.
Right.
It's not, and then there's some people who say if you actually look this up, this is what happened. So we're a lot of people, like you said, this is to your point of not doing your own research. There's a YouTuber that I love to hate. I'm not going to say his not going to say his name. I'll tell you after. But he has such a big following, and he's waking people up, and he just talks nonsense for 1 to 2.5 hours straight. I watch it because I like to pick it apart. Like, I literally love to hate on it. But it's like, I just took one of his points and just Googled it, found the real story, and he was ranting based off of something that he heard or just saw on Instagram.
Right.
I'm kind of deviating from the main point, but yeah, there is. It's just what people know, not willing to take a nothing more than a superficial look at things,
right.
And you come to realize that, okay, like, no, not all white people prefer zero seasoning on their food.
Right.
Like, that's outlandish to assume.
Right.
Or not all black people like fried chicken, watermelon, and whatever, all the stereotypes.
Right.
So when it comes to accepting yourself, now there's struggles, because even I still deal with it today. Like I say, in the workplace, or if you encounter somebody, there might be that minor insecurity, as if like, okay, like, and does this person accept me for who I am, or do I need to, like, those insecure feelings. But how do you truly, and you said this a little earlier about having your circle of people, how do you find yourself accepting who you are as the person you are? In the midst of all this, okay, I have a Japanese side, because we didn't even touch that. I'm glad you brought it up, that you actually you feel like you need to prove I'm going to sound real ignorant, your Asian side as well.
Yeah.
So when it comes to acceptance, do you have any tactics, ways to help somebody if they are going through the same thing of not feeling accepted, but how to just love yourself for who you are and what you do?
You got to give yourself grace. When you're young, you're like so eager to be grown. You're like, I can't wait until I'm 18. I can't wait till I'm 21, and then I can really be who I want to be. But when you get to, like, I'm sorry, at 25, I had a whole like midlife crisis. Like, I didn't know who I was, what I wanted to do anymore. Before, I thought I had everything like straight and knew exactly who I wanted to be. And I just sat there, like, I just had a moment and was like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? It wasn't that I wasn't doing anything. I had a great job. I was traveling. I just came back from overseas, and I still wasn't satisfied because it wasn't what I thought I was going to be experiencing at that age. And over the years, and then also I suffer from anxiety and depression like many people do, and I've dealt with it since the age of 10. So on top of having that issue, trying to actually figure out who I was a lot. And then even as a Jehovah's Witness, trying to balance yourself spiritually and still maintain a sense of self. At that point, I feel like I had became very like robotic, just sticking to a script of what I knew I wanted or what I needed to do in order to have a happy life. But I actually wasn't living a happy life. And so, having grace, letting yourself make mistakes, letting yourself learn from your mistakes and your hiccups, learning from others, feeding off of others. But also, like, when you say, like, you have insecurities, like, to some extent, I find insecurities to be a little bit healthy because they help humble you. Now, if you have insecurities to the extent where it's like, you know, they're painting you every night and you just, you know, you're tossing and turning because you just don't like something about yourself, that's a whole different discussion. But some of the insecurities I have is like, you don't have it all together. But knowing I have those issues also lets me know, like, you're human, you're fine, like, you can still live with it and still be happy, and learning to be content. In my 20s, I was not content whatsoever. But I've learned to become content, and I'm still practicing to be content with my life, and still being able to know, like, you can still improve. Because I think, like, every time we think about people who are content, usually you're thinking about somebody who's, like, at a certain level in their life and they're not trying to exceed or be better. But if you're able to give yourself grace, you can see, like, okay, I'm good with who I am, and I can see where I can still improve. But when you have that unrealistic visual that I plan to be a certain way by a certain point in my life, and that's like a huge thing I know amongst, you know, people of color specifically. We're always, you know, trying to live up to other people's standards in order for them to be proud of us, because we're always wanting the outside to be looking at us at the best of who we are. And it's like, you know, sometimes your best is enough, and that's when you kind of, you know, gotta, like, realize, like, it's enough. I don't have to keep stressing about not exceeding people's expectations. You know, I shouldn't always have to be this excellent, you know, black person, because then it's like, now I start to feel like a slave where I'm, like, tap dancing for everybody because I want to make sure that they're perceiving me in the best light possible. And it's like, you don't always have to be the best. It's okay. You can be mediocre. You can be trash for a little bit too.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Specifically, like you said, being content, but also, you know, not tap dancing, not in the African American term, but more so tap dancing, like, for other people, like, even for black people. Like, I'll tell you what, I was telling Kayla this the other day. There was, like, a small little box in a history book in school for Malcolm X.
Right.
I couldn't tell you nothing about no Malcolm X until I actually, like, saw the movie, right? So that, I'm trying to connect to what I really want to say. I'm not trying to sound like, okay, I might see somebody selling shea butter, you know, one of them people, and, oh, you know, my brother, woo, 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 and all this other stuff. And I'm not trying to, like, you know, tell him the philosophy of Marcus Garvey, just so he knows that, oh, yeah, I'm down, like, you know, and all this other stuff. And at the same time, you know, you meet somebody else and try to live up to their expectation or how they carry themselves and try to, you know, marry them. It's just, like you said, contentment. Content. I'm black. That won't change. I like fried chicken, but I barely eat fried chicken. I'm a keep it real.
Keep it 100.
Listen, I'm eating lamb after this. I'm eating lamb chops, rack of lamb.
Eat good. That's called good eating.
Yes. Kayla, she'll be like, "You're bougie." I'm like, I'm an adult. I make my money.
Juice.
And
this was my choice.
Yeah, like
Jamba Juice.
like I wasn't raised I wasn't raised to be straight. I wasn't in the streets. I put my pinky toenail in the streets and got smoked. So I knew it wasn't for me. Like I put, like, seriously, I always say that, like, I was barely in the streets. I had people, I was just looking at my man down in Georgia who died in 2021, and I think about him. He was in the streets. He went to jail. He lived the life, and he died. Right. He died. He was 29, and he got killed by some teenagers. Wow. Being in the streets. So, what was my point of saying that? He was just on my mind. That's all. What was the point? Anyway, you are who you are. Right. You are who you are. You don't have to be super Black Power, Angela Davis, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey III. Yeah, you like what you like. You don't have to. What did Kendrick say? Eat watermelon, chicken. February's my B day, something like that.
What I wanted to add to this discussion was that I didn't realize until recent years, us as Black people here, it's very unfortunate because when you go to other countries and you get to see how people are, even though those people still have their own issues within their own cultures, America, for us as Black people, plain and simple, from history, America was not built for us. So we're still trying to fit a shoe that is not made for us. So that's why I appreciate us, having the truth, knowing Jehovah, because I swear, being in America and trying to like make it fit for us is almost like impossible. You can find your spaces, but ultimately this is going to always be a foreign place, even if this is the place that our families have called home for generations. And it's interesting when, like we still code switch. The reason why we code switch is because it was built that way. There's standards. There's a way we dress for work. Having to wear hair a certain way, having to, wear certain clothing to go to work. It's all to fit what we're not. Always having to put on a costume in order to be in that space. But for everyone else, it's comfortable. One girl, this white girl I was listening to, was talking about how she won an award at work for the way that she dresses. And she says, half the time I come to work with my hair unkept. I didn't even wash my hair for like 4 days, and I'm getting an award for this. And they were like, well, the hair that the other black girl that was in her job, she was like, but she gets her hair done, and it's done always, and she's always dressed up, coming to work. She says, I come in a North Face vest and some slacks, and tie up my hair into this little messy bun to try to look a little bit presentable. But this girl, I'm sure, gets up a whole 2 hours or hour ahead of time before she has to leave the house. And I just rolled out of bed and came to work, and you're giving me an award. And so, this is not all of America, of course, but, for the most part, these spaces that we walk into, we're always going to have to present ourselves a certain way in order to not be a threat and to make others feel comfortable, because in order for us to feel a little bit comfortable in the space we're in, we got to make others comfortable. And that's just kind of like our sad reality.
Check this out, because I was about to move on, but I don't want to keep you too long. We've been at this for a little bit, and there's still one more thing I want to get into. But I'll tell you this, because I've never dealt with no hair issues.
I haven't either.
Like, it's either it's either, okay, I got like an even Steven when I was a kid, during the pandemic, gone straight bald. You start getting haircuts for yourself. I'm getting a fade, temp fade. My stuff is nappy grown out right now, but I've never been told to change my hair or had like a negative comment on my hair. And these are one of those things, if I wanted to, like, man, y'all ain't nobody telling y'all to change y'all hair or nothing like that. But it had to take somebody to tell me. At my last job, somebody, of course, she was black, and like we would talk. She was in another department, but you know, in the hallway, oh, how you doing, Q? Yeah, woo, 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 chop it up real quick. And like she was saying how some people in her department and surrounding departments, like, really racist. But like talking about the hair, talking about like, and she never had no crazy hair, stuff like box braids and the twists, certain twists and stuff. And it's crazy. I'm like, they're really doing that? Yeah. Like I was surprised. But it's like it's a real thing. It's a real thing. And up until then, like I'm a male and I'm dealing with, you know, like, and thankfully I've worked with, for the most part, I've worked with a lot of people in my life who stick to work pretty much. Like they try not to do the politics and religion talk at work. So there's like less controversy. Right. But I'm finding out in these other departments, there's all sorts of mumbo jumbo going on, and it's just messed up. I'm like, man, like you feel bad for them. Like, It's like, really? Like you're getting braids and that's a problem. It's crazy. It's crazy. But if you would have asked me, so I just wanted to throw that in there because as a male, like I never saw it directly. Nobody came to me saying, "Did you see her hair?" You know, nobody complained to me about nothing like that. Right. But that it had no real point except for me to say that.
No, you gave a good point. Like it shows that it's happening, and it's not that every single black problem happens to all of us all the time. It's just that each person is having a certain experience because of just them being a black person. And like you said, her hairstyles weren't crazy. I think the only reason why I was never spoken to is because I've always looked at as this like hipster, hippie girl that is just like, you know, also kind of intimidating because people always are a little afraid of me when they initially meet me because I have a very plain face when I meet people.
You keep the face, okay.
I don't be just out here smiling and stuff. It's the Southside Chicago girl in me. I don't just be out here smiling like, hey, it's a bright and sunny day. I just come plain face like, what's up? What we got to do? So I think that always kind of scares people, especially white people. And then when they finally talk to me, they're, oh, she's a pleasant black girl. Okay, we're good.
Oh, she's sweet. All right, so loving yourself, be content, be yourself. That's cool. Speaking of loving yourself, so we were talking about how like the world was taken by storm by Chicago, right? There's a song by like SZA on SZA's album "Smoking on an X-Pac." That's just like a side note, like, but it's like that's like Chicago really runs. Your lingo, Chicago, Florida, people's lingo today and the slang that they use. But anyway, I was thinking about SZA and I was listening to her album. I gave it like a couple weeks before I listened because when I see a bunch of people post the same thing, it kind of repels me.
I'm
That's
like
just
that
me.
Too. I'm that person too. Petty.
So I'm like, I'm seeing too much SZA. So I'm not, and I like her. But I'm like, I'm seeing too much. I don't want to join in with on the Kill Bill run. Right. And I love the song now. So anyway, I'm listening to it and I'm like, she's talking about like getting cosmetic surgery, right. Getting work done.
Right.
And I think it was the first time I heard a female like sing about getting work done on their body, whether it's face, whether it's a tummy tuck, a BBL, all that stuff. And I'm like, like, cool, she's owning it. Like, I think it was pretty obvious if you have seen SZA back in the day compared to what she looks like now. Like,
Right.
either you have the best trainer in the world or you got some work done. Cool. But it made me think about Lauryn Hill saying, "How you gonna win if you ain't right within?" And I thought, that song she's talking about. I feel like internally, how you gonna win if you ain't right within? Not specifically talking about surgery,
Right.
but it made me think. Okay, and I'm talking about SZA not only because she like sung about it. I didn't take her as that type of person. I don't know the chick from a hole in a wall, but I never viewed SZA as I'm gonna go get work done, as that type of person.
I understand what you're coming from.
So that's another reason why I wanted to talk about this. Kind of like, all right, let me make my point clear here. I was thinking, I'm like, if I can talk about SZA, like, I didn't think she would be that type of person, or why would she get her body done? SZA's rich. I'm broke, and probably most of her
That part.
real talk. And I'm just gonna guess most of her listeners are broke enough to not be able to get their body done. Yeah, like I got no money compared to these people. So I'm like, you know what? Would I change anything? And what's there's like an excessiveness that you can do with like getting work done. I go to the dentist and get my teeth cleaned,
Right.
things like that.
Right.
But like when it comes to like that internal self-love, is there like a line being crossed when you get work done? Like, would you get a personified BBL? I just like saying BBL. So BBL in this podcast means work done in general. Like, lip fillers, a tummy tuck, liposuction, fake muscles like Bandman Kevo, if anybody knows who that is.
They even tried to expose Drake for that too.
Yeah, right. They said he had liposuction. So he got a BBL. Drake got a BBL. So do you have an opinion on that in the context of self-love and stuff?
So one I wanted to bring out. Okay, so I follow SZA on a private account of hers, and she's always posting like stuff that she has never posted on her public profile. And when she posted her body, I was like, something is different. Am I crazy? Like, I know she got thicker, but I'm like, am I crazy? And so for a while, I was like thinking, like, I think she got something done. And so for a while, SZA has progressively done stuff, because I've met this woman twice in my city. And she looks way different than the first two times that I've seen her. Her face is completely different. Not saying that she didn't have great work done, because she was beautiful then. She's still gorgeous now. But it's still kind of shocking to see it. But, when you brought up that Lauryn Hill bit, one of her lyrics, I feel like when you are actually happy with who you are, but you just want to improve yourself, and maybe that was going to be the fastest way to get to where she wanted because she has the money for it, I'm not mad at it. I personally like my own shape. Now, if I had the money to just go ahead and suck out some extra fat that I don't want, sure, I'd go ahead and do that. The reconstruction stuff, I'm not down for it. But, it improves people. I'm more afraid of what's going to look like, 30, 40, 50 years from now. Since it's not my body, and, usually our bodies reject stuff after a while anytime it's something cosmetic done to us. So I'm just more fearful of what I'm going to look like later, and trying to maintain it, because, your body's not going to age the same way that it was intended to. So I don't know. But, I don't think you know, that it shows that you don't love or that you're not content with yourself, because like I was saying before, being content doesn't mean you can't improve yourself, you know. So for her, I guess, you know, this is a way of improving herself, and she's open and honest about it. And I guess she felt like, you know, before y'all start talking about me, I'm going to talk about myself first. Mm-hmm. And she let us know, and she put out some fire tracks. She my favorite rapper now, because she had bars. And now it's just like, you know, I'm sure it made other, you know, women and possibly even other men feel empowered to, you know, be who they want to be and still, you know, love themselves and still feel confident to get work done. But, you know, it ain't really for me though.
I hear you. Yeah. Yeah. I thought about something. It seems like the first thing people do, at least in hip hop and R&B. I don't know what they do in the other genres, but it seems like the first thing they do, which is good for them when they get that check, is get a fresh pair of veneers.
Oh my God, it's so terrible.
Yeah, and they're so perfect. like they're so perfectly aligned. And I thought about it because I have big teeth. My two front teeth are big. I was called SpongeBob. Before SpongeBob came out, this is real, like I can laugh about it now. But before SpongeBob came on the scene, it was Bugs Bunny. Because Bugs Bunny was he was first.
Oh, sorry.
But SpongeBob dropped in 99, 2000. But I wasn't immediately called SpongeBob because we all wasn't watching it yet. But I'm thinking, now if I got that big bag, am I getting veneers? Am I getting like a whole? But I thought no. Like I would keep my teeth as long as I can. Now if the gums start getting,
right,
you know, gum recession, all right, give me some gums, give me some new teeth, keep this mouth like.
I was a snag-a-tooth child, okay? I had double teeth everywhere. Like, when you think about Japanese people, you see raggedy teeth. I had raggedy teeth. And just thankfully, my mouth just kind of sort of tried to fix itself. I still got one little raggedy tooth that's up in here, but people be like, they don't notice it. And so I'm content with my mouth. I could have got braces, you know, and everything like that. But my teeth are clean. They work just fine. And, like, it's only really in the music industry where you see people getting their mouths done. But, like, if you look at Zendaya, Shorty got a tooth just, like, folded. Like, it stick out and do a little tilt thing. And ain't nobody talking about Zendaya mouth.
They better not. She's like how other people view the queen. in our in the black culture, like she's untouchable.
But all actors, you know, you can look at quite a few actors, and their teeth they're jacked. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's because they have to be people, you know, in films. They have to be actual people. So I guess that just adds to the naturalness. But like for artists, especially rappers, like you said, like all of a sudden they got these chompers. And you'd be like, yo, why did you do this to yourself?
Yeah, I don't think, you know what, I'm starting to think they just don't take care of themselves.
Oh.
Like, but yeah, like, I guess, you know, the teeth are one thing. And the thing is, everybody has a build a body, and they just all look alike now. Now we have our...
It's right there,
yeah. Everybody, like, all their teeth look alike. Even with okay, it's nice to have a perfect set of teeth and all that stuff. But now everybody's teeth look the same. These people are getting, all the same celebrity doctors. Okay, I find it odd that, like, all these big celebrity, more so the women, they're quote unquote snatched, but they're so busy.
Yeah.
Like, they're so busy. Unless your diet is perfect, like, you're not snatched. and and it's just like they all have the same body.
Yeah. The face is the same too.
The face, oh my
Everybody
gosh,
has
their
turned light
face.
skin all of a sudden.
Your lips are nice. Your nose has suddenly, your bridge is different.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think, and I can't speak for all people because we're born with different. We're born different. We're all different. Everybody is unique in their own way. So I can't tell anybody else how to feel.
Right.
There's nothing. I guess I have nothing else to say after that.
But no,
because it's like if
I feel exactly what you're saying. Everybody's looking the same. That's why I pray SZA stops. Because like I said, like when I initially saw SZA, I was super excited to see an artist that I felt like I resonated with physically.
Okay.
She's a thicker girl. She's like similar height to me. She's brown skinned. Now she's looking a lot lighter. I don't know if it just has to do with just be working inside and the makeup and lighting and stuff. But, it all kind of turned into the same shade of brown these days. And like the nose slendering, she had a wider nose. And, lip fillers. She already had nice plump lips. And now she got lip fillers and that what do you call it? I don't know. The triangular face is happening, and I'm just like, what happened to the you? And it's like I said, self-improvement. I'm all for it, And even if it looks good, it's just like, what is it gonna look like later? It's everybody's choice and it's their bodies and stuff like that. So I never want to sound like I'm being judgmental for someone's decision for them to accept and love who they are. I don't know what's all involved in that for each individual, but it's just really strange because we're in this Instagram era of people going to a doctor and saying, I want to look like this person, and then getting things done exactly like that person, opposed to them just asking for, I just want a more slender face. Instead, they're asking for, a certain person's shape of face, and they want a certain person's build. And it's like you mentioned, all of us are built, like we're made differently. So that snatched waist, shelf booty, wide hips, it's not meant for everybody. Everybody's body type, everybody's body can't carry that kind of weight being on them in certain ways, especially those who are not of Afro descent. Just gonna be honest. Like, seeing that is crazy. Like, some people, you'll see them have that natural body, but like, it starts to actually have health problems for them because it's like your body wasn't meant to carry or distribute your weight this way. You're not built like that. And so changing your whole making in order to look a certain way because we're in a specific era is just wild.
Yeah, that's another thing. Thank you for saying all of that, because it's like a domino effect that, okay, some years ago, somebody popular might have had a certain look, a certain body shape.
Right.
And now they have influence, they're famous, they're popular, blah, blah, blah. There's another little girl who looks up to them. And the standard of what's considered pretty, beautiful, or a baddie is this standard. This is the expectation for a baddie, because this is what you see. This is what's shoved down your throat.
Right.
Especially for young people, because when you're young, you're into whoever is hot and popular right now. And so what is the young, and we're talking about women, but like this applies to men in a way too, like in another way, not only the way you look, but also like you don't got to be a trapper, you don't got to be a trap star. But I'm just going to go back to women, because I think it's messed up. I think it's messed up more so for women appearance wise, because we're born different, and this is all that you see. There's these stupid, and I'm saying stupid, gym influencers.
Yes.
Like, it's so stupid. They themselves got their body done,
Right.
and now they're in the gym
Right.
acting like they're putting in work. I'm telling you this now. I go to the gym almost every day. I might take 1 or 2 days off depending on, whatever. I do that. I love it. That's my thing. What was the point of me saying that? What was like? There was a real point. I wasn't like bragging. Like, I wasn't saying.
Like, hold on.
Oh gosh, I got because I.
You're talking about the influencers and how they're influencing people.
So there's these people. I don't know why I brought up myself, because that sounded like conceited. There was a reason for that. That's
point, though. I know you.
That's what I was trying to. Why'd I bring up me? But anyway, the young people, these gym influencers, and they have. It's an unrealistic expectation for guys too when it comes to that gym stuff. But like, okay, now everybody, they want to get on their squats and deadlifts and do these workouts specifically to attain this certain body type.
Right.
When in reality, it's like, okay, it's all cap. Like, this person got their body done.
Right.
They're not in the gym like that every day. Oh yeah, by the way, they're on steroids. Like, they're getting
exactly.
And I think it's messed up for the youth. Oh my gosh. Like, it's messed up for the youth. It's messed up for the young people.
Right.
And older people too. You hear about these botched surgeries because this dude was trying to look like Kourtney Kardashian, or have a certain face, like you said, reconstructing their whole thing to look like somebody else. But the standard of beauty is so warped now that can't stand it.
Yeah, I can't.
I guess
stand
the rant's
it either.
over.
Honestly, I don't think there's any real era in modern history where people weren't trying to look a certain way, because of, it's just worse because we have social media and it's easier to put in people's faces and constantly browbeat them into feeling the pressure of needing to change, and there actually being quick avenues in which to do these changes, whereas before it was kind of like, okay, use a corset if I want to make my body look a certain way really quick, or I'm going to just try to use makeup in a certain way or style myself in a certain way to look a specific way, but now it's gotten so deep where people are going under the knife. They're traveling out of the country to these, hole in the wall doctors to get something fixed real quick because they're just so impatient to look a certain way because they're just not happy, and they want everything is just like they want quick gratification. Mm-hmm. And that's, when we come back to just talking about just being content with what you have. And then, if you want to improve, take the steps to do that. But, you should be working towards it, not just trying to get instant results, because instant results come with even faster consequences. And so, just trying to change yourself so quickly, yeah, okay, you can look good in 2022. But I don't know about 2020 December. We talking about SZA. SZA got money, so if something starts to look a little warped, she can go straight back to the doctor. Take her little time off that she needs because she got the money for it. But someone that's in our poor class, because we ain't really got middle class no more. Someone in our class, right. We ain't got the PPP loans and stuff no more coming our ways. Oh, so yeah. you don't have the time to be taken off because everyone's still trying to survive in this recession that we're having now all over again. So it's like, what are you gonna do when your BBL starts failing, and now you got a lopsided booty, and and you're more depressed because you're trying to put on this facade that you have a body that wasn't yours to begin with, and you can't maintain it, because I honestly think you need to maintain those things, and it's not just working out, because I think even for the ones who do work out, their bodies transform even faster because their body's like, all right, we got to redistribute the fat in your body the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And now you got lumps in places you shouldn't be having lumps.
Yeah. Even it makes me think about like gastric bypass, when people get like gastric bypass surgery. My grandmother got that. My late grandmother. I'm not dissing her. This ain't no smoke. Grandma ain't gonna see this and trying to knock me out. But my late grandmother, she had the gastric bypass surgery, and it's like you still have to, like, she was older as well. She couldn't be like super active, but you had to maintain certain habits. I was listening to the guy I mentioned earlier. He had like he went viral because like his muscles were like he went under the knife and he got some fat taken, and he just looks like an action figure. And he was talking about how like he still has to maintain it. So if you're living this life, and if you got money, it's easier to have, you could eat steak every day, steak and lobster every day. So you can like just for the young people, and no young kids watch this or anything, but I'm saying it anyway. Like, oh my gosh, take your time. Yeah. If you want to look, when you're old enough, go to the gym, do your thing. If you want something, change it. Some things you won't have. These teeth ain't getting any shorter, and that's just something I got to deal with, literally. Like they're not getting any shorter. I'm pigeon-toed in my left leg, in my left foot. I'm pigeon-toed. I'm not gonna, get pigeon surgery. Like, but that's not like a big deal.
Right.
But like other things, like I happen to be like a little tall. Like I'm 5'11". It's easier to say 6. If I was 5'4", that's not my fault. Like,
facts.
You know what I mean? Like it's not my exactly. But that's my piece on that. I'm done. I'm done.
Nah, you're speaking facts, and yeah, just speaking to our age group, people older, people younger, we're people, and we're consistently evolving and changing, and so what's happening now, we're in 2023, what's popular now may not be popular in the next 4 or 5 years. And nowadays it's not on trend to care about what's happening in the future, but just love what's going on now. But honestly, like, you kind of gotta be a little concerned. Because it's yourself, and learning to love, and the whole point of you having this discussion is just how to love yourself, and having self-love, and what that means. And so just, we're not talking about stuff that's temporary, that's being done, that people are getting done to themselves. It's stuff that could be also life-threatening. Going under the knife is not something that's a quick, situation. You get done, and you got blood going on, leaking out of your body. These girls being like all these bandages and stuff like that. Gotta have specialized pillows to lay on and stuff. Like,
yeah, they don't show you that.
Yeah, it's a process, and it's like, okay, I see you're willing to go through that, but it's like, is it really worth it? Is it worth it? Instead of just being content with what you got and being able to improve what you have. And, some people say, no, I'm not content with that, and I'm going to change it. And hey, that's for you, I guess. Not for me. But, even if I had the money.
Even if you had the bread. All right. Love yourself. Love yourself. If you're black, you're black. Can't nobody tell you you're not. You're black. If you have weird shaped shoulders, you have weird shaped shoulders. Now, if you can't walk, that was a horrible example. Anyway, love yourself. Let me not try to keep making this up on the fly. Love yourself. So, yeah, I guess, any last words? Thank you for coming on, by the way.
I appreciate it. I feel so honored that you want to have a discussion with little old me, you know. I love talking about stuff like this, you know, real stuff, you know, and, you know, I hope people in the comments will actually give their point of views to our discussion. We weren't trying to spew out no type of hate or anything like that, so please don't be trying to fight in the comments for opinions that were given.
No, I'll tell you this, and I'm going to leave this in here specifically, so when people see this, I'm going to edit this to another planet, because this is the most try-hard, politically correct platform in the world. I said this before we started shooting for context. If I think anything could offend someone or we can be looked at in a bad light, I try to take it out. And sometimes, like, good content is sacrificed.
Yeah.
Like, for the sake of, what's the word? I guess keeping the peace among people. But, yeah, I'm going to try not to.
No, I'm just playing. I don't. I really don't. Not on the internet.
Oh, man, the internet. Yeah, it's forever. But anyway, yeah, Yumi, thank you for coming on. She's a real trooper too. There was some like technical difficulties at the beginning of this, and she did her thing. So special thank you, because you could have been like, you know what, this isn't working. Can we just reschedule?
I had to show up for you, bro.
So thank you, and yeah, that's it. So this is the Cool Hand Podcast. Something you got to deal with. Leave a comment, like all that stuff that the YouTubers say. And we're out. Easy.